Hey, what's up, everybody? Uh, Happy Monday morning. It is currently 49 degrees, nice and warm here in Canada South. Uh, gonna be rainy all day. It'll still be warm tonight. 38 around midnight. 7:26 is the sunrise. 4:16 is the sunset. And so we've lost a little bit of daylight since Friday, but the pace has slowed down. Right, we've been losing consistently 3 minutes every single day, and we've lost 4 minutes over 3 days. So the amount of daylight we're losing is slowed down significantly. Okay, um, and we we've been in a study of the judges, and last week um, I talked about maybe jumping over to Samson, but after looking at it and praying on it, I think we're gonna finish. We'll finish Gideon, at least. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about Abimelech, one of his sons, too. So in uh, so Gideon, so far, he defeated the Midianites with 300. Okay, and so um, he he gets confronted by Ephraim, by the men of Ephraim. This is chapter 8, Judges chapter 8, and um, they're upset that he didn't call them for the battle to take part in a victory over the Midianites, and wisely he he says to them, "What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of grapes of Ephraim better than the great harvest of Abiezer? God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeb. What have I been able to do in comparison with you?" Then their anger against him subsided when he said this. So, okay, we learn a little bit about the economy in Ephraim. It's a horticulture, right? And they grow grapes, right? And so he's comparing them. He's comparing it, their capture, because he called them to um, to find and kill Zeb and Oreb. That is better than the victory that he had over the Midianite army. Okay, and so um, they he calmed them down, and he used like some reverse psychology on them to lift their heart, right? Lift their heart. See, confidence matters, all right, and heart matters. And so here he actually had the confidence to speak that victory in battle. It built this momentum that he could speak up for himself and speak wisely in the moment, and kind of use this play on words, and use their um, their victory over Orb and Zeb to lift their heart, right? And so, if you recall in Judges 6, he couldn't even speak when he was confronted by the men in town after he took apart their altars, and used the wood from the altar, the Ashereth, to burn his sacrifice. And so here he's doing all the speaking on his own. And so, as we get confidence in our victories over the enemy, it gives us the ability to um, be bold in our approach, right? We need to be bold in our approach, bold but wise, right? He noticed he didn't um, argue back. He essentially placated to them, and he helped them understand what God had did for them, right? God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, not my hands, the princes. He gave into your hands the princes of Midian. Like, isn't that better? And so then Gideon, he's crossing over the Jordan with the 300. This is verse 4, and he's exhausted. And so he comes to town of Succoth, And he says, please give loaves of bread and people to follow me. Loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing after them. So he's going after Zeba and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian now. And so those kings are on the run. And he's tired. He's chasing them, and he's asking the town for food. He's asking the town for food, and the townspeople, right? So the officials of Succoth said, "Are the hands of Zeba and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your army?" Okay, so notice here, the enemy can use even our victories to separate us. All right, and I don't just mean the enemy that we see. This is the Satan, right? Satan and the way he works and the deception, right? He even uses the victories to separate us. That's cunning. That's extremely cunning. And then so look at what Gideon's response is. So Gideon said, "Well then, when the Lord has given Zeba and Zalmunna into my hand, I will flail your flesh with thorns and thorns of the wilderness and with briars." Okay, so here at least Gideon is giving credit to the Lord for the victory. And so then from there he goes up to Penuel and spoke to them the same way he spoke to the men of Succoth, and the men of Penuel answered the same way as the men of Succoth. And this time he said to the men of Penuel, "When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower." And so Zeba and Zalmunna, they were posted up in Karkor with their army, and they only had 15,000 men left from 120,000 that in the defeat. Okay, so then Gideon goes up, and Zeba and Zalmunna, they ran again, and he pursued them and captured the two kings, Midian and Zeba and Zalmunna, and threw all the army into a panic. Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle by the ascent of Heres, and he captured a young man from Succoth and questioned him, and he wrote down for him the officials and elders of Succoth, 77 men. And he came to the men of Succoth and said, "Behold, Zeba and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, Are they in the hands? Are the hands of Zeba and Zalmunna already in your hand? We should give bread to your men who are exhausted." And he took the elders of the city and took thorns of the wilderness and briars with them, and taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And he broke down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city. Then he said to Zeba and Zalmunna, "Where are the men whom you killed at Tabor?" They answered, "As you are, so were they. Every one of them resembled the son of a king." So Gideon, notice Gideon now is resembling a king. It says he resembles the son of a king. Now, most kings that we read in storybooks and the kings going forward, they're kind of like brats, right? Brats who think more of themselves than they should. And so we're going to see a pattern as we go through here. So Gideon, he says, "I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." That's in verse 23. Okay? But in verse 21, he took King Zeba's and Zalmunna's crescent ornaments. That's what it's called, crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. He took them, and so now he's amassing things of the kings, right? And so he took their ornaments. He took the garments of the kings in verse 26. Okay. Um, in verse 24, he took the wealth and the spoils of the kings. In verse 27, he made the breastplate of Judah and went on and wearing at which only the high priest would wear. So he adorned himself in these elevated pieces, in these elevated things, right? So looking more and more like a king. His son, right? So he has many wives. That's verse 30. He had many wives and many sons, and then his son Abimelech. It means my father is king. So he named his son my father is king. So the back in verse 18, when Zeba and Zalmunna said that they are as you were, every one of them resembled the son of a king, right? They're saying that Israel was lofty, and so they're going to do just like he's going to do, and they killed him. That's where the people went. And he says, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you, right? And then he said to Jether, his firstborn, rise and kill them. But the young man did not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a young man. Then Zeba and Zalmunna said, rise yourself and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon rose and killed Zeba and Zalmunna, and he took the crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. And so, what Zeba and Zalmunna did, right, in that, saying that, a man is as he is, so rise up and do it yourself. And so he did it, and in that killing, something happened in his heart, right? That same confidence we talked about from battle, that same confidence not submitted into the Spirit of the Lord turns into something different. So, as Christians, we have this ability to defeat the enemy. We are overcomers. We're more than conquerors, scriptures say. And so when we start having these victories, what does it do to our heart? Okay, we got to be careful to protect our heart, to guard our hearts, because our hearts are our hearts are wicked always, right? They're deceptively evil. Our hearts will trick us into doing evil. And so here, what they did was they planted the seed to turn Gideon's heart. And so, even to the point where Gideon made an ephod, which only the high priest would wear. We learn about that in Exodus 28. Okay, and so even though Midian was subdued, that's verse 28, Midian was subdued before the people of Israel, and they raised their heads no more, and the land had rest 40 years in the days of Gideon. All right, so there was our time of peace. We have the time of apostasy, the time of oppression, the time of battle, and the Lord freeing, and then we got the time of peace. So the full cycle. But the way the heart works, when we're being oppressed, our hearts are weak and we turn to weakness. When we have victories, God gives us victories, our hearts grow confident. We can do mighty things in the name of the Lord. But with our heart unchecked in victories, we do evil in the sight of the Lord.